Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer Leapmotor may enter India soon. The EV maker is gearing up for the Indian market foray, towing the line of its predecessors like MG Motor and BYD. With its partnership with Stellantis, which recently acquired a stake in its global operations, Leapmotor aims to announce its investment and entry plans for India soon. Now, Stellantis, a major player in the global automotive industry with brands like Citroën, Jeep and Fiat, the partnership with Stellantis has bolstered Leapmotor's confidence in venture into India despite stringent regulations governing investment from countries sharing a border with India. Remember, BYD is facing challenges in expanding its operations in India due to approval issues from the government, while MG Motor had to involve an Indian partner to comply with regulations. What is the future for Leapmotors, and can another Chinese EV player enter India? Let's discuss that. Dilip Chenoy, Chairperson of India Battery Swapping Association, joining us on the show. Dilip, thank you for taking time out once again. Good to have you back. What are we making of Leapmotors' entry into India? Will it be as easy as it sounds right now?
I think, Shweta, you got to look at it in a different context. I think it's Stellantis which will lead the foray into India. It's not Leapmotors, right? The entity that you will see will be that entity, and therefore there might be an easier journey into India for them. See, the press note 3 or whatever you have been referring to relates to investments from those countries that have a neighboring border or a border with India. Now, if Stellantis were to get in from a different geography that does not have a neighboring border from India, then it would make it easier. So it all depends on how and where they decide, the strategy, where they get the money in from. Is it going to come in from non-Chinese location or a Chinese location?
Hi Dilip, Kartik here. Thanks for joining us today. So Stellantis, as I understand, owns just about 21% stake in Leapmotor in China. Is that enough for it to be the majority stakeholder of selling the same brand of vehicles in India, or is that likely to be confronted with challenges of its own?
So you got to see what that 21% entails. So I think the 21% entails the entire global business, non-Chinese business. So if you look at the fine print, it may be that Stellantis is responsible for its global expansion and global business, and therefore anything that it does globally, while they might hold 21% in the parent company, this would be their own independent venture going forward. But that you have to see the fine print, and depends how the regulators and how the officials look at it.
Okay, but just for ample clarity, Dilip, is it fair to assume at this point that Stellantis will use its existing India partners, including CK Birla Group, and that is going to be taking care of the Indian investment that any brand or any company which wants to sell in India has to have an Indian partner? So is it fair to assume that CK Birla is going to be that partner for Stellantis, because CK Birla already is partnering with the company in selling Citroën vehicles?
Yeah, so the CK Birla Group has a history in the automotive industry. If you recall, they really owned the erstwhile, Ambassador brand, and they also have bits and pieces in the component industry. So how Stellantis chooses to play this depends, one, on their relationship with the CK Birla Group, and two, whether the CK Birla Group is looking at the EV space and that other aspect going forward. It's too early to say, but makes a logical sense for them to work with the existing partner than go to a new partner.
Okay, and help us understand, Dilip, what are the kind of tax implications for Stellantis stroke Leapmotor, as the case may be, if these cars are coming to India in a completely knocked down format and will get assembled, assuming in a plant that Stellantis already operates in Pune or thereabouts? What are the kind of taxes that will have to be paid by Stellantis stroke Leapmotor in getting these knockdown cars here to India, and what kind of an impact is that likely to have on the selling price of existing low cost entry level models, which in the ideal calculation of a dollar conversion should cost well under 10 lakh rupees?
And just to add to that, does it make any business sense for them to bring in completely built-in units?
Completely knocked down, I think, is going to make sense for them.
Yeah, CK. So there are two different duty regimes that are existing today. One is a traditional duty regime if you're getting a CKD in here, which is under normal duty suspension. But if you recall on your own channel, we had a discussion when the new EV manufacturing policy was introduced. And there, there are certain different duty treatments and different kind of agreements. There's a cap of 8,000 vehicles or a duty of 15% or whatever it is. So it depends on which policy and which area they choose to enter India with, right? Whether they qualify for the manufacturing policy. Of course, all the earlier discussion was on Tesla, but Tesla is actually pulled out, and we have all the other companies.
Dilip, sorry to cut you short, but are you hoping that they will be able to utilize the existing EV policy, the more, the tweak that was essentially, as many would say, was made for Tesla? Do you think Leapmotor or Stellantis will be able to make use of that policy?
Yeah, it's a business decision. They will have to look at their product mix and their product mix and how they want to use it, and whether they will use a non-Chinese location. Because if you recall, there was some comment that there was some gray area where the Chinese vehicle manufacturers would be allowed to look at it, and will be allowed to enter in that way. But I think going forward, as companies apply and then the discussions happen, more clarity will emerge.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Dilip, but does the 15% import duty not be limited only to cars which are costing $35,000 and above, by virtue of which it may entail that the topmost model of Leapmotor may be able to avail of that policy and then be restricted by just 8,000 units that it can sell in India? What happens to the lower end, the cars which are costing about $10,000 or so? Is there any other policy framework apart from PLI, if they want to manufacture in India and not necessarily assemble in India, that comes to their rescue?
Yeah, but PLI, I think the window is closed for PLI at the moment, unless the government plans to reopen the PLI, because all the OEs who applied and got accepted, they're already in place. So, the automotive market is a very interesting market. So do you bring in, plus $35,000 vehicle and create a brand name and create market entry, and then look at market manufacturing and positioning other vehicles in India? Is that the strategy that they're looking at? Or they might say, okay, we don't want any special duty concessions or whatever it is. We will bring in, a sub 10K model, and we will bring it in through the existing duty structure under the CKD route. So it could be either way. It depends on the company.
So are we looking at fresh investments? Because even if they were to use the CKD route and not the CBU route where they pay the 60-70% import duty, but if they were to look at a CKD route, then are we looking at definitive investments to be made in assembly lines?
Yes, there would be. There definitely would require an assembly line. It could be within an existing manufacturer. If you recall, earlier, when Mercedes first came in, they used the telco plant to manufacture, and then they got sufficient volumes and they moved out. Or you could see some other, existing manufacturer manufacturing. We don't know yet. It's too early.
Right. If they were to come in, and if they were to come in at the price point, which is quite mouth-watering, Dilip, how do you see Leapmotor's entry into India disrupting India's EV market? Because right now, I think the only competition that Leapmotor will face in the confines of India is going to be through, through Tata Motors.
Well, Kartik, if you look at the EV space 6 months or 9 months down the road, right, which is roughly the time frame at which we can expect these vehicles to come in, unless they use the existing dealership network and they do something which is very innovative, you would see many more models coming out in the marketplace, right? I think there have been announcements by other manufacturers to look at the entry-level models, or in a slightly higher SUV type of model, which is not being offered now by Indian manufacturer at that level. Even the Indian manufacturers looking at that. So you're going to see significant new addition, right? And depends in which model and which price range they begin, because the entry level is fairly segmented. Are they going to be going to go to the fleets? Are they going to go to individual customers? Are going to go to the mix? So it lot depends on what the strategy is.
Okay, I hate to put you in a spot here, Dilip, but do you think India definitely needs FAME to come back in the form of FAME 3 and electric four-wheelers becoming a very, very vital cog in the disbursement of the grants under FAME 3?
And you know, since you were also part of industry body, Dilip, I think you can give us a sense of what's happening behind the curtains. Is government actively engaging with industry body to perhaps come out with some sort of contours of FAME 3 as and if it comes back to power?
So, actually, the ministry is very actively involved in. They've set up 11, if not 12, different groups looking at an EV policy. For the next 100 days, next 2030, 47. They're actually looking at that. So, a lot of groups have been set up, a lot of consultations have been held. And this is an ongoing process, and you would see that the ministry is very, very clear about looking at electric vehicle policy, and of course, therefore, the FAME policy. And four-wheelers maybe in buses, maybe in public transportation, maybe fleets. So you might actually find a different thing coming in, but there's a whole lot of consultation going in with all stakeholders.
Okay, so one must not expect any concession for passenger cars, passenger EV cars. Is that not something that may just come up in future?
Possibility is there. Everybody wants it to continue for a few more years. What is the extent and what amount of vehicles will be covered? It all depends on the total allocation for FAME 3 and how they want to divide it.
All right. And the last time we had you, Dilip, we were in the midst of a very interesting conversation around Elon Musk and Tesla coming to India. Since then, all the excitement has been put to rest. Come to think of it, Elon Musk has moved China once again. What are we making of Tesla's plans to come to India? Have they been put on the back burner, or is it not going to happen at all?
No, it's in the auto space, you can never say what's going to happen. Right? Let me give you a very recent example. If you look at MG Motors and JSW, initially when a lot of people started talking about it, both refuted it, right? And many channels and many people were taking the story up there, and eventually 3 to 4 months down the line, it all happened. Yeah. So you don't know what it is. There might be, I think Tesla suddenly started facing a whole lot of challenges, which I think at the time that they were looking at their India entry were not very, very evident and did not take away huge bandwidth at the leadership level. I think once that is addressed and they can look at it, I'm sure they will look at the Indian market, and they might be having teams looking at the Indian market.
So what are these challenges, Dilip, for the benefit of our audience, if you could help us understand, what are these challenges?
No, I mean, sales have dropped for one for Tesla, right? There was a challenge on the top line and bottom line, and if you notice that, he's restructuring. He was very big on this whole charging infrastructure thing. He's actually done away with that. There's someone else within the group who's looking at that. So there are different challenges in terms of. His business model, the markets that he was doing, there was a slowdown in some of the markets. So I think it was not really anticipated, because post-COVID, everybody thought that there will be revenge kind of purchase, which is happening in many markets, but not necessarily in that price range and market segment in which he was currently serving.
Okay, Dilip, if you were to just crystal ball gaze into the future and put your bet, what is it which is actually going to disrupt India's electric four-wheeler market? Is it going to be entry-level cars like the ones that Tata Motors is introducing and the ones that Leapmotor may at some point in the future drive into India? Or is it going to be the slightly more expensive SUVs that MG Motor promises to launch? Or are we actually looking at the early adoption happening in the luxury space and then perhaps trickling down towards the bottom?
Kartik, it's actually happening at different levels. And if you recall, in an earlier discussion, I was saying that the percentage of penetration of electric vehicles as a percentage of total sales is much higher at the luxury end segment, right?
Yep.
And at the lower end segment, I think we have a challenge of models and capacity. and deliveries there at the moment. And I think the manufacturers are getting to address that. Once we have more models coming in, it's very simple. If you look at it, we are at the Maruti 800 stage of the electric vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. And hence the question, that is the disruption going to come in entry-level cars and not really in the top-of-line SUVs?
If you want volumes, it has to come in entry-level. There's no option, but they'll come in, see what is happening, the entry-level is also veering around to SUVs. Right? Entry-level, and if you see even the Mahindra vehicle, it's an X300, which is a type of an SUV, and you're seeing SUV launches by Tatas and the others to come in. So, at that price point, what is the seating capacity and what is the type of vehicle people are looking at? You'll see that happen. But, the major major unforeseeable thing is regulation.
Right.
I mean, if something like what happened when, the environment and the Supreme Court talked about introducing CNG in Delhi.
Right.
If that happens, right, in some cities because of environmental concerns, others, it will change. It'll be a major disruptor.
Which is something that, in fact, Road Minister Nitin Gadkari had also alluded to, about a month back or so, that when the government, and he used the term when, right now the question is if the government comes back to power, then is it going to be the, the priority of the government to go after petrol and diesel cars, which means come the first 100 days of the new government, will it become that much less lucrative to buy an ICE engine, and hence by way of any tax incentive that much more lucrative to buy EV or hybrids?
Yeah, actually, it depends on which city you are and where you are. The interesting thing that happened very recently was the Supreme Court judgment on environment.
Yeah.
Right? So that could be a trend setter for something else going forward. And, depending on where you're located and what you want to do and how much you travel, right? I mean, if you are in a metro, right, and, you want a vehicle that does 100 to 200 kilometers or 80 to 90 kilometers a day, and you want to protect, it's your only vehicle and you want to protect yourself against any regulatory disturbance or, anything to do with odd even or banning of vehicles, etc. out there.
Yeah.
Then at this point, a better bet is the EV.
Right.
Right? But if you are not there and if you're in a different situation, you do extensive travel, you travel between cities, you want to use your vehicle for other purposes and you can't afford an electric vehicle at that price range, which allows you to do that, then you should look at a hybrid or an ICE vehicle. And, if you're, hybrids are a little more expensive than ICE. So if you can't afford a hybrid, you look at ICE there. So, and also if you can look at taking a flexi fuel vehicle now, of course, most of them are coming E20 compatible.
Right.
So that's also another option. It's not one size fits all. It depends on your budget, where you are staying, and what's the amount of travel that you do, because the total cost of ownership varies as you look at it.
Okay, there's no one size fits all, but EV and hybrid perhaps is the new name of the game. Dilip Chenoy, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you for your inputs, sir. But it does look like from what's happening in the EV space that there is more hustle and bustle as Leapmotor also looks to enter India. India could be looking at a lucrative offerings in EV from low cost to perhaps high cost going forward. Depends on what price point Leap Motors at all decides to enter.